South Africa's education system is rated among the worst performing in the world, plagued by incompetence and corruption. This is according to a report by the Center for Development and Enterprise. And as part of Youth Month, we unpack South Africa's education system since the advent of democracy and how has the curriculum evolved over the years. For more on this, we are now joined by Professor Vimolan Mudaly, an education expert at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, the Center for Development has published that South Africa has one of the worst performing educational systems. What was your reaction to this?
Actually, yes, we are performing quite badly in terms of our student performances in schools, and I think we have a lot of work to do to get to par with other countries. It's not about us performing poorly in terms of the world, in terms of first world countries. The concern is that we're performing poorly in terms of countries in Africa as well, countries that are, in terms of the economies, that are far worse than South Africa, and we're still performing quite poorly, and that's of grave concern to all.
Speaking of those countries, Prof, I mean, the report states that South Africa is doing worse than Eswatini, which is our neighbors, Kenya and Tanzania, which have a GDP per capita less than 1/5 of South Africa. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think what has happened is that it's not about the economy of the countries that we're talking about. It's about the kind of infrastructure. It's about the kind of education that we're providing. I think we have some problems that we need to address. Like, for example, we have a large number of very good teachers, but we have a large percentage of teachers that are simply not doing what they should be doing, and we don't have any systems in place to ensure that these teachers are being assessed regularly, being monitored regularly, and the continuous development of teachers is virtually non-existent. And I think what needs to happen is that the Department of Education, who's complicit in all of these, together with unions, they need to now start to think about how education standards needs to improve. That's the one thing. And then, of course, if our schools, I believe that we spend between 13 and 20% of our budget on education, but we are not showing much for that because schools are still struggling without resources. There are schools without fresh water. There are schools, without ablution facilities. It's just not happening. And there are classrooms, the teacher-learner ratios are just too high. And so therefore, I think in terms of all of this, it's not about the amount of money that the countries have. It's about how we utilize it and what's good. I think corruption has destroyed our education system. And whether we like it or not, I think education has been one of our greatest failings in the country.
Prof, I mean, you just mentioned that we have good enough teachers, but with one of the assessments that was done for this report, out of 39 countries, there was an assessment for grade 9 learners on a test designed for grade 8 learners. We came second last in maths proficiency, and we came in last in science proficiency. Does this speak to the level of skill that we have with regards to the teachers in the country?
That is our concern. Our concern is that two things, and we must look at this from 2 points of view. One, we understand that our teachers need to be upgraded, and that's what I'm talking about. We need to have constant teacher development, and that's not happening. We talk about the point system that needs to be implemented in schools for all teachers, but that's not happening really. And teachers need to constantly be attending workshops. Now, I'm not talking about workshops that subject advisors conduct in their local circuits. I'm talking about recognized assessment-based courses that teachers will have to attend, so that they will keep up with the current pedagogical developments in teaching. Content knowledge is definitely lacking. Pedagogical knowledge is also lacking, and so if teachers are not going to be keeping abreast, and I understand that teachers don't want this, because they feel that they know it all already, and that's the percentage of teachers that I was talking about. The second point that I want to make is that much of this research concentrates, in particular schools. So I wouldn't take the statistics that we are getting at face value. I mean, I'd really like to see which schools were involved and so on, to determine whether the statistics really speak for all teachers in South Africa. A generalization like that is quite quite important to understand the sample that was used.
I mean, the sample also, Prof, speaks of us getting the highest teacher absenteeism in the SADC region. How much of that contributes to this, apart from the skill aspect, as well as the contribution of unions, because we're seeing a lot of jobs for cash, which is contributing to the sort of culture that we're inculcating amongst teachers?
Okay, so there is the problem that the Department of Education, Basic Education, needs to address. I mean, if the absenteeism is as high as 10%, what has the Department of Education done? I mean, that needs to be addressed urgently. And then the investigation that was done with regards to jobs for cash, the report was released, and it was released a long time ago. But to date, nothing has been done. So certainly there are major issues, and I think, as I said, Department of Education has to be complicit in all of this, because I mean, there are issues that they can address, but they're not. I mean, absenteeism is a big issue, and I'm personally, because I'm involved in education research, I can tell you now that teachers stay away for all kinds of reasons, and that needs to be addressed urgently. And I'm not sure when that will take place and how that will be taking place, but it certainly needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
Most certainly. Now, the CDE, Prof, has given recommendations on 5 focus areas. And I think you've tackled some of them in terms of improving the performance and introducing higher teaching standards. But some of them speak on tackling corruption, raise accountability by bringing back the annual national assessment tests for grade 1s to 9, as well as setting realistic educational, national and provincial performance goals. How much of this do you believe is attainable?
I think the CDE's recommendation, all 5 of them are very important. I think if we take away teacher unions from the deployment of staff, from getting involved in the employment of principals and HODs, and even in administration at the departmental level, maybe that would help. The reinstatement of the ANAs, I think that, there is this perception that if ANAs were reinstated, then it will, ensure the teachers do their work. I'm not sure that that is the only answer. I think bringing teachers on par with the actual basic, content understanding of. I mean, if 60% of the teachers, only 60% understand the knowledge at grade 6 level or grade 8 level, then that speaks volumes of where we stand. I mean, what are they teaching? How are they going to teach learners, the absolute content for that curriculum for that year, if they don't even know all of that? So, and having the ANAs, that will only produce poor results. It doesn't help us at all. But getting teachers to become au fait with all of the content, ensuring that the teachers are attending classes for all of the content areas, ensuring that they are, becoming experts in all of these areas, will make sure that when they teach in the classrooms, those areas are going to be covered. And then, of course, having the ANA tests and so on will account for something. I mean, many of our many of the research that we do at the universities with schools show that, I mean, if we have a higher content knowledge and a good pedagogical content knowledge, then our learners perform better, and that, I think, is important. And of course, if you look at the other issues that the CDE raised, like the fresh leadership in public education, I think that's important. I think there were some issues raised in the report. I think it was the NEDU report, or some of the reports that were released regarding the jobs for cash. I think we need to go back. We need to understand what was said there, and we need to relook at that. And of course, and we have to set realistic goals. And I think the one thing that is not coming out very clearly is that we constantly, when we want to improve the standards of our education, we decrease the pass rate. So if we want to have a better pass rate, to show the country in the world that we're doing better, we drop the percentage pass rate. So now it's 30%. I think instead of doing that, we should be working really hard to try to increase our pass, get the students to pass at 40%. And it's not rocket science that everybody knows that a child with 30% has barely a basic knowledge of what has been taught over 12 years of education. So going through 12 years of schooling, and a child then ends up in matric with 30%, it simply means that they have a basic understanding. And even the 30% means that they've been tested on just a small portion of the curriculum. So that's a scary part of what happens at school.
It most certainly is. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That was University of KwaZulu-Natal's education expert, Professor Vimolan Mudaly, speaking to us there about the CDE report putting South Africa as one of the worst educational systems.